Hello. Just making sure that the tech is working. Let's see. If there's anyone joining this live, please let me know in the chat. Then I'll know for sure that everything is working correctly. I was actually live like 5 minutes ago, but for some reason I got an error that said that LinkedIn couldn't connect with StreamYard, which is what I'm streaming on. And so I had to quickly create another live event. And I'm hoping it's connecting to the right one. So if it is, please let me know in the comments. And then I'll be able to know for sure that everything is working correctly. Oh, I see Amanda saying good morning. Good morning, Amanda. Where are you tuning in from? Let me know where you're located. I'm in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. So it's actually 12 o'clock on my side in the afternoon. But I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're joining. Yeah, if you have any questions already, please let me know in the chat, and then I'll make sure to discuss it. But I'm actually here to share my thoughts on how you can actually work with a holistic content architecture. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this is that what I see is that most sophisticated systems that we are creating and managing and deploying, that those systems tend to fail when the human architecture underneath it isn't coherent. And this is something that I've been dealing with in my own work at Albert Heijn, but also in previous companies that I worked in, where content was being seen as something to dump basically in databases, and mostly at the end of the value chain when you start publishing content. And so a lot of structure is missing in that entire pipeline, and that causes a lot of chaos. So yeah, I actually want to share my thoughts about, okay, how can we resolve this? And I've been diving really deep into how to create a framework that holds everything together in a holistic way. So I'll be diving into that in a few seconds, but I see that Amanda is tuning in from Michigan's Upper Peninsula in the USA. So, wow, super cool that you're here. Welcome. And I'm really curious what time it is on your side. I never quite figure out the math of it, but Ah, I see that Stefan is here as well. And he's saying that everything is working smoothly. So I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. I've met Stefan at one of Janus Boy's meetups that he organizes a lot. It was a few months ago in Amsterdam where I first met Stefan, and he's very good at making sure that content is being displayed in a very accessible way, especially for not only neurodivergent people but people with actual disabilities in perceiving content on digital channels. So that's very important work that Stefan is doing. So thank you very much for joining. And Amanda is saying it's just past 7 a.m. So very good morning. That's really early that you actually showed up here. So thank you very much for that. I'll make sure that your time here is worthwhile. And so that's also the reason why I wanted to dive into the framework that I've been sharing last week during World Information Architecture Day in London. And it has been shared with many people on LinkedIn as well. So let me just pull it up. I hope this is going well. Let me see. So this is my first time on a live stream, so be gentle with me. Um, Let me see if this is working. I will share my screen and I will add it to the stage. So hopefully you're seeing Canva right now. And the actual framework that I showed during World Information Architecture Day. And this has actually also been shared by one of our members on LinkedIn. I don't know what her name is again. Let me just look it up for a sec. Because people were wildly enthusiastic when she shared it. Let me see. I think it was Ruth Henry. Ruth Henry, who was also present at World Information Architecture Day. She shared this framework with her audience on LinkedIn, and she was really excited about it, saying that that most organizations are so busy asking whether their content is good enough, but they never ask whether the content actually knows what it is. So let me just make it a bit larger for you so that it's more easily readable. And so when she shared this framework on her LinkedIn, 60 people responded and started a conversation about how important it is to have holistic content architecture, especially if you want to publish to a lot of channels simultaneously. And also, when you're starting to work with AI and AI doesn't know the proper context of the content, it becomes increasingly important to make sure that everything is structured and grounded in truth. So I wanted to take you through the framework. It's 7 layers, and just let me know in the comments, whatever resonates with you, and whatever you have questions about. So this is actually a framework that I developed myself, not just from the work that I've been doing for almost 10 years at Albert Heijn, which is the largest grocer in the Netherlands, where I do a lot with content on multiple channels, but not just on the creation side, but also actually on the tech side, where content is being stored in databases, from which different channels need to publish the content from. And I've noticed that missing this holistic framework really you know can keep us from using that content in a very omni-channel way, that actually scales. So what that means is that the more content you want to publish, eventually you shouldn't have to do more to publish more, but you should be able to reuse whatever works in a automated way, while making sure that it connects to the purpose of an organization and connects to the strategy of an organization, and actually helps the people that consume that content. So this could be customers or clients or actual citizens. Whenever you're working in a government, your content should be helping them to to reach the job that they have to do, right, to be able to do it. And whenever we are too focused on just pushing out content without structuring it, it becomes really difficult to serve many people in a relevant way, but also in a scalable way, so that you are not losing too much money and effort and time on making sure that everyone receives the right content at the right moment in the right place. And so this architecture is actually something that I created from a a standpoint, a viewpoint of how a supply chain operates. So that's really the the grosser way of thinking, a part of the model, but also how human beings work, like how complex we are as humans. If we look at how um, um, we operate in the world from our identity, and how we express ourselves in the world. And I see a clear connection between how systems work and how humans work. And the connecting part of that is, for me, it comes from a spiritual um, um, center. And if I'll show you the framework, you could probably immediately see where I get it from. But okay, let me just start and taking you through it, because I keep on yapping about it. But one of these layers where content starts is when we start producing content from a certain source. So this is, of course, what you're familiar with in your day-to-day work. When you start creating content, and you're storing it in a database, um, this is actually where content starts becoming tangible. So from whatever we think and speak about, if we are talking about our business strategy and whatever we want to um, we want to help people with, help organizations with, the content that we actually produce is something that um, you shouldn't not just create it without knowing how the workflows are defined, or whether the source of, or the reason why the content is created, without knowing that, and without knowing whether the content that has been created has actually been approved. So you want to know the original source, which is often business strategy. That's the reason why you create the content. You want to know for each piece of content what the purpose is, why it was created, etc., etc. And so whenever you've created it, you want to make sure that it becomes ready to be used. So often we create raw materials of content, images, photos, audio, videos, documents, etc. Um, and whenever we've created it, we store it maybe with with a name that is not recognizable to everyone, or with the code that it comes with whenever you store it, or whenever you download it. But this is not enough to give enough context to whether the content is actually ready to be used. And it also doesn't say anything about the quality of the content. So what you want to do is you want to document the standards, the shared standards that you agree upon within your organization when a piece of content is done and when it is ready to be used throughout the system. And so what you agree upon is basically a certain level of or a threshold when content is ready to enter the ecosystem. So when it is leaving its source, basically, and flows throughout other systems within the organization. And so this is where I don't know, where most companies um, you know get stuck and they don't get further than this level, and some don't even um, do refinement on their content, so they don't really look at whether the quality is there for it to be used by themselves and other teams within the organizations. um, and if we look at the next layer, so this is where content actually becomes traceable, um, so that it's not only identified by humans that look at it, but also identified by the systems through which the content needs to move. And this is where identifiers become important, um, and where the attributes or the characteristics that you added from the level before that actually helps you to find the content as fast as possible. So an example is whenever we store a file with a name that is not clear. So this could be a code, or I don't know, some terms that you've came up with yourself, but that don't directly relate to the content that you're storing. Then it becomes very hard for another person that has to work with that content to find that content. But it also becomes very hard for the system to uniquely identify that piece of content. And really, identity is, the unique way in which we can identify a piece of content, whatever it is in the organization or in the system, and you can compare it with how we identify ourselves as citizens within society. So without our social security number, um, it would be quite hard for people that don't know us to identify us properly. So if you relate that to how we treat content, then it becomes clear how important it is to add identity to content. And from this layer, um, you can start using semantics to make content meaningful. So it starts with identity, and then you add meaning to it, you add context to it that helps us to, to not only capture the meaning of that piece of content um, within the silo in which it is stored, but it actually helps other systems around um, the source to share that meaning, and to exchange that meaning. So what I mean with this is that, let's say, we have a photo or a picture of an organic product, let's say an apple, and that picture is actually the piece of content that you have about that product. Um, but whenever that picture doesn't have um, attributes like, okay, this is an apple, and it is green, and it is an organic apple, then for the system to be able to recognize um, whenever that image is attached to a certain product, then it becomes quite hard to scale the meaning of um, you know thousands and millions of products within the system to connect that picture, the right picture, to the right product, but also to be able to play around with the meaning of whatever is organic. How can we assemble that into an image that expresses what what content we have for our again organic products. So this is something that really this is at the heart of the holistic content architecture, where we use meaning to connect to other domains within the organization. So not just content, but actually which content is relevant for which customer, and which piece of content belongs to a certain product category. And that actually helps you to keep everything together in a grounded way that makes sense, before you go to the next levels, which are about distributing content across multiple channels to multiple customers, and scaling that operation without having to do extra manual work for it to be relevant across multiple channels. And so semantics is really at the heart of this content architecture, and it's the basis for the next level, which I already explained. Like, okay, now we have our content stored, we have refined it, we added identity to it, but now it needs to move across multiple channels. And how do you manage that if you don't have the grounding of identity and semantics to do that? And really, this fifth level is what makes content portable, and helps you to be able to publish content as fast as possible without losing meaning, without losing context, but also moving content between silos without duplicating data across the ecosystem. And so these four levels that go before level five help us to move content around the ecosystem in a structured way and feed every channel without having to duplicate content, and without bottlenecks within the content value chain or within the data pipeline. And the bottleneck is often the manual labor that needs to be done because we haven't dealt with all the previous layers before we started putting content in motion. And so this is actually, a really important level to consider before you start talking about AI and, omni-channel strategies, etc. And so whenever we've dealt with these five layers, we can start seeing content manage itself. We start seeing content having autonomy, where because we have enough context and we have enough information about the content, we can actually automate it and start doing personalization at scale, and also using AI in a way that amplifies all of the structured thinking that has gone into the content that we have created and stored. So this is where you start to see AI really pay off, because you've done all the work that is not that sexy. You've started doing that before you fed your content to AI. And this is really where I see the promise that was made to marketers, about personalization. This can really, be enabled when you've dealt with all the layers before. Um, and whenever you have autonomy in place, then you're really going to start talking about scaling your content, not just in how much you are able to publish, but also in how much you're able to drive strategy, seeing return on investment, and seeing that you know content can actually be part of the ecosystem as a strategic asset, and something that really helps to drive whatever comes next. So you'll see what people engage with, you track it, you connect it to performance metrics, and that really helps you to use content as a strategic asset. And that's eventually where I wanted to go to. So yeah, this is the framework, and I see it's already time. So I don't know if there are any questions so far. I'm looking at the chat at the moment. But this is actually what I wanted to share. You know, free thinking, free stream of thought. Um, and I'm actually wondering whether someone recognizes um, the ancient structure that lies beneath this model. Um, so I'll keep my mouth shut for now. And yeah, I'm curious. Let me know. So this is the first time I'm actually doing a live stream without having any speaker notes prepared. So thank you for following my stream of thought, following my stream of consciousness. Um, and yeah, I hope next week you will be here again. I don't have a topic yet, but if you are willing to, do a suggestion, I will definitely take that into consideration for next week, where I'll be sharing my thoughts again. So thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Stefan, for joining. Who else is here? I see 4 people, so that's really great. And I'm still finding out how everything works. So I cannot actually see the list of people that have joined at the moment. Let me check if there is one way to figure that out. Thank you, Stefan, for tagging others in your comment. That really helps to see who can see. Yeah, I will be closing off the live stream. But thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.